Hey guys, Kuyo here, and today I'm going to do something that I don't really do on this channel. And that's making something that's not really a lore video. Instead, I want to talk about a company, or rather a publisher, who has made some of my most favorite games, and maybe even some of the best games to ever exist. That of course being Bethesda Softworks, which you could probably assume from just the fact that most of the content on my channel is Bethesda based. And what I want to talk about in this video is just how Bethesda's changed, how it's risen, and how it's changed throughout the years, and how perhaps things might change in the future. With that said, let's get right into the video. Roll that intro.
These NPCs are not scripted. You can walk all the way to the top of that mountain.
Now to kind of reiterate on what I said in that little intro bit at the beginning of the video, this is a very new series, or maybe even just a one-shot video, and as a result, it's going to be completely different than anything I've ever made. Which is primarily due to the fact that it's not lore. Rather, it's just kind of my opinion. I've really wanted to make one of these opinion pieces for a really long time, and I think that this kind of strange schedule that I've been thrown into over the past few weeks has given me the perfect opportunity to do so. So that said, the first thing I wanted to talk about was what exactly Bethesda means to me, and what exactly it's done and how it's influenced my life. Because I think it's very important to understand how Bethesda became the giant it is today. And for me, which I think a lot of you who watch this channel might already know, my first Elder Scrolls game was actually Skyrim. And I was in 6th grade at the time when I heard about Skyrim. And just the sheer fact that I could explore so much and see so much of the world, and how the game was actually really, really cheap, meant so much to me. Like, it opened so many gates in what would eventually become one of my greatest passions, which was, and is, YouTube. And that entire kind of experience summed up is what I feel epitomizes what was Bethesda's rising action. What made it the big giant that it was. And that's the fact that, at some point, it was just a very small niche studio that rose up from making just that, very small niche games, all the way into making these sprawling open worlds with multiple choices, even if they are just illusions. With each game having so much character and so much just life in it. And that not only encompasses their big studios like Bethesda Game Studios that made games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, Fallout 3, things along that line, but also studios like Arcane that somehow managed to revitalize entire genres and bring about waves in the entire community that were honestly never experienced, and perhaps none more so than the acquisition of id Software, which would eventually lead to the revival of Doom. And while all this was developing during small controversies kind of developing behind the scenes, it's indicative of the staying power of Bethesda that they created by earning all this goodwill from their fans. And that's also where it kind of starts breaking apart. See, at the time that they could kind of start doing anything, they're on top of the world. They could never be stopped. I'd say the time right after Skyrim, towards the middle life of Fallout 4, something went wrong. And that's the kind of rise of live services, specifically in how Bethesda found so much success from Fallout Shelter, that they began to realize that, hey, we can make games, and we could probably make more money from them by just putting microtransactions in. And hey, maybe if we just made an all-online game, we could charge money for people to buy it, and then charge them for cosmetics or items inside the game. And that's where I think they went wrong. It started out very small with things like Creation Club, and eventually grew into the mess that Fallout 76 is. But it wasn't just slow, and it wasn't really just extremely fast. It was a blend of everything. I feel like everything about it was destined to come true. Bethesda, of course, is a company, and they want to make profit, and though they are private, it seems as though they're trying to go public with their stocks and their finances. So maybe this was all part of a big plan for them to do that, but that's delving into things I don't know enough about. But in general, it seems like they're just doing what companies do best, and that's trying to make money. And live services are the trend right now, and they probably will be for a long time because they can make more money than a single player game. And that's what I kind of feel is the falling action of Bethesda as a publisher. See, while they may have had mainstays like Skyrim, Fallout 4, Dishonored, Doom, even, they've begun slowly incorporating the whole idea of live services into their games. And like I just said a little bit ago, in the case of Fallout 76, they've incorporated that entire existence, like the entire game itself. For Arcane, there was actually a recent listing for Deathloop involving a live services manager, or something along those lines. And with Doom, they've already incorporated the multiplayer, which I think, based off like the previews, is probably going to be getting a much larger role in Doom Eternal. And while all of this can be very positive, for me, it seems like they're going down a very steep hill that really they can't stop themselves from crashing at the bottom of. And while maybe something like TES 6 or Starfield could save the entire publisher, they've still managed to sully their name. And people will remember that Bethesda was the same company that sold them these crappy games with microtransactions. In fact, the games could be really good, but the microtransactions could ruin them altogether. And maybe it might just ruin everything that Bethesda's worked up to until this point, because Fallout 76 has honestly kind of done a lot to do that. That said, before I continue into the last kind of major portion I want to talk about in this video, I think exceptions should be noted. And that is those that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Those obviously being Doom, Prey, Dishonored 1 and 2, that one game that was made by Avalanche, I forget the exact name of it. It's a sequel to another one that was made by id. But while some of them may have been received a little less critically positively, they are still standout games that are pretty fun and are not just ways for Bethesda to make money, at least on the surface. And they are exceptions. And I think I'll kind of use that to segue into what I want to say next. And that's the future for Bethesda. See, Bethesda is owned by a parent company called ZeniMax, and ZeniMax produces... Actually, I think they only produce one game, which is ESO. Or at least they own a studio called ZeniMax Online Studios that makes ESO. And what these kind of games, as well as this live service, spells out for me, the future of Bethesda, is a company that's going to go down a very slippery slope. And one that they will eventually recover from, maybe even turn around, kind of like how Ubisoft managed to do themselves. But at the same time, sully their name so much that they'll always have that title. Because something like Ubisoft, despite the games that they're making, and how they're getting better and better, are still kind of burdened by the whole concept of a Ubisoft open world. Which, as we all know, is like giant towers, climb this, find these collectibles, etc., etc. And that's where I feel a kind of air of cautious optimism would be very important when looking at future games. While we can obviously get super hyped about them, like I've seen with Deathloop or Elder Scrolls 6 especially, or maybe even a little bit Starfield, it's always best to look to the future with the most caution that you possibly can have. Because something can be hyped and lied about to such an extent that we believe it's going to be good, i.e. Fallout 76's marketing. Or it can be the exact opposite, like in the case of Prey 2017. And whatever it is, we'll never really know until we play the game ourselves. So when it comes to the future of Bethesda, and maybe even ZeniMax, I think it's best to just keep doing what we're doing, which is tell Bethesda that we don't like what they're doing right now with microtransactions, and how we want it to stop. But more importantly, to vote with our wallets. And for people who buy things thinking that, oh, it doesn't affect anything if I just buy one thing, tell them that their one little payment to Bethesda is enough to convince the people there that what they're doing is right. which is an idea that can be taken for the entire game industry, and is something I'll use to kind of wrap up this entire video. So, in short, Bethesda, while still a studio for great games, and one that could produce great games, is definitely headed in the wrong direction. And we've all known that. There's nothing new that I'm saying here. But what I feel a lot of people miss is the cautiousness. No one's really there to be optimistic about the game and be cautious about it. It's always the extremes. People never like to just look at something rationally. They love just looking at it from, I hate this is going to be only microtransactions, or I hate this is, or I love this is going to be the best game ever. Which is actually the reason why I bought Fallout 76 even after all the bad reviews. And that is that things can always change, and hopefully in time Bethesda will fix themselves, and maybe we'll see a Test 6 that we really want, and one that can finally live up to all the hype, which honestly I doubt, but is always a soothing thought. With all that said, it's been a great time doing this kind of new video with y'all. If you like this kind of video, maybe I'll do another in the future, though I don't really have any ideas at the time. So as always, thanks for watching the video. You guys know exactly what to do. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you disliked, leave a dislike. And if you really liked it, subscribe, because it only gets better from here with my more scripted videos on the way. And don't forget to hit that bell icon, because if you don't hit that, you won't get my notifications for any new content that I upload. So with that out of the way, thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Kuyo out.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is all